good to have a fellow Californian talk about the book business. It's a lot of because of our location and everything where we are here. It's we're primarily an East Coast show, and most of the guests obviously East Coast guests. But as I was mentioning before, I grew up in California and graduated from college there and high school and all that good stuff. And it's fun and it's interesting to see the future vice president of the AABA and a fellow California guy actually in the book biz. It's great to have you with us today. Uh, I'd love to hear a lot more. We want to hear about your new show. I'm excited to know, as we were saying, I think it was President Kennedy that said, "A rising tide floats all boats," but I think he ripped that off from Frost or somebody.
All right.
Anyway, Alan, what's up, Alan?
We do want to welcome Brad Johnson to the Rare Book Cafe, and want to tell everybody that the Rare Book Cafe is the book lovers' rendezvous. It is a place where the topics are priceless and the conversation is free. It's a virtual cafe available anywhere in the world. Today is September 26, 2019. We have 209 days left until the next Florida Antiquarian Book Fair, which is April 24th to the 26th in 2020. With me today are Thorne, of course. Hi, Thorne. And Brad Johnson of Rare Books LAX. And that's a book fair coming up next weekend. We'll be talking with Brad in a little bit. Later on, we'll be talking with Edie Eisenstein and the queen of miniature books in Miami Beach, Florida. We'll see Lindsay Thompson will be with us, and Stephen Eisenstein will be with us a little later as well. I want to remind everybody that there's an opportunity to like and share our program, and we want to invite you to do that. We also want to invite you to tell us where in the world you're watching from. There are channels. We have channels where this program. Now, the main place where you can watch the Rare Book Cafe is on the Rare Book Cafe page on Facebook, but there are many other channels. And this is, I want to announce this for the first time, that the Rare Book Cafe is available for syndication. Now, you may ask, well, what does that mean, syndication? Well, it means that you can put the Rare Book Cafe on your channel, on your page in Facebook, and it costs you absolutely nothing. It costs you absolutely nothing. And in fact, if you're interested in doing that, you send us an email at rarebookcafe@gmail.com, and we'll fill you in on all the details. It's really very simple to be able to do that, and it's something that will help you to be able to share your interest in rare and collectible books wherever you are, and to share it with people that will have an interest in it. So I invite you to do that. This is the first time we've had this program to be able to syndicate it. Syndicating it is sort of like you get to have, what are some of the syndicated programs? The Wheel. You get to have Wheel of Fortune on your own. But of course, our channel, our program is not Wheel of Fortune, of course, but you get the idea that you can have a program like this on your own channel, and it doesn't cost you a doggone thing. So if you're interested in doing that, by all means, let us know. We have a full show today. We have Edie with her miniature books. We have Lindsay will be with us and talking about the importance of research in collecting rare and collectible books. And then Thorne will be talking with us later about Edgar Allan Poe, and Stephen will be with us later on with the market report. But before we get to that, let's talk with Brad, who is visiting us today, and he's in LA. Are you in LA? You're
Just outside Covina.
just out Covina. Okay, and you have an event coming up next weekend. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we have an event next Saturday and Sunday, October 5th and 6th at the Proud Bird by LAX. And the event is called Rare Books LAX. It's the second book fair organized by Rare Books LA. And we're really excited. We've got about a little bit more than 80 booksellers from around the world, specialists in, of course, antiquarian books, ephemera, classic photography, fine prints, fine works on paper in general. So this is a long time coming. It's been a good decade since there's been a book fair mounted on the west side of Los Angeles, which used to be, Grand Central for book fairs. The ABAA used to host their fairs in the hotels there on Century Boulevard. And we're just excited to be back. It should be a great fair.
So tell us a little bit about how this came about, that you're now doing a book fair. This is the second one that you've done this year. Is that right?
That's correct. For many years, probably close to 2 decades, there was a company called Bustamante Enterprises, and they mounted book fairs and antique fairs here in Southern California. And Mr. Bustamante turned 93 about a year and a half ago, and so he decided it was finally time to retire. And so Bustamante Enterprises was no more, and my wife and I, together with our partners, Jody and Michelle, decided that we wanted to form a new business to promote book fairs. We really believe that regional book fairs are vital to the ecosystem, and we're excited to sort of bring book fairs into the modern age. We're sort of blurring the lines a little bit and inviting specialists from sister disciplines to participate, and really trying to reach out to new markets and new demographics through social media and other outreach platforms. And
so when you say sister disciplines, what do you elaborate on that a little bit? From the get-go, our first fair was this past February at the Pasadena Convention Center. It preceded the big ABAA show in Oakland by a week, and so we had 126 exhibitors, and among those exhibitors you had some of the leading dealers in antiquarian books, but we also partnered with the IFPDA, the Fine Print Dealers Association, and we had about 20 or so of their members. We also worked with Michael Dawson here in Los Angeles, who brought in about a dozen or so specialists in fine art and classic photography. And we've always been very open and welcoming to the people who are what traditionally called paper dealers or ephemera specialists. We feel like it is a big umbrella, and all are welcome. And what has been the response to that, particularly among traditional book dealers?
Oh, it's been tremendous. I mean, both of our fairs sold out immediately in terms of the exhibitors, and the crowd in February. We had some pretty torrential rains, and as Thorne could probably attest as a former Californian, we kind of lose our minds down here in the LA area when the water falls from the sky. But we had tremendous crowds both days. We had several booksellers who have been in the trade for decades have their best fair ever in February. We had one exhibitor do more than $400,000 in business.
Wow.
It was the response was tremendous. We were really, really pleased, and thus far our ticket sales for this forthcoming Rare Books LAX show are outpacing what we experienced in Pasadena.
Wow. You brought some images that you wanted to show us.
Oh, sure. Hopefully I don't screw this up.
No problems. I can do it. You can do it. We've got this.
Let's see. So, oh, I don't know if that was the one I wanted to share. Let's see.
Okay, I'm seeing an image right
Oh,
now.
yeah. Wasn't the one I was hoping to bring up, but let's see here.
There we go.
Yeah. These are just a flavor of, oh, shoot. I've lost the image I wanted. Oh, well. Yeah, let's see.
See if you're able to scroll through those.
Okay, let's see if I can do that. Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with the platform, and I don't see anywhere I would scroll. So
usually, if it shows up, it's in the middle of your screen. But it looks like that's gone away. So maybe you can find another one of those images.
Ah, that's the same one.
While Brad is looking, as an old California boy, I'm personally very, very pleased to have the book fairs back in the West Coast. I mean, there are book fairs and all that, but there's definitely a need for them, the different time of the year and all that. And there's lots of dealers that, frankly, if they're not going to travel to New York or Florida or whatever, but they're fine dealers with fine products, and it's just really good to have them there and have Brad and his partners, everything re-upping a long-standing tradition in the West Los Angeles, and I'm very pleased to hear it. What's this? Los Angeles World Champions. What would that be?
This is an item that one of our exhibitors, Biblioctopus, will be having on display at the fair. This is I believe it was 1956 Dodgers World Championship ring. This is the first year that the Dodgers won the World Series in Los Angeles. So a pretty spectacular item that will be available for sale at the fair. There's some amazing material that we've been previewing on our Instagram. If you follow us at rarebookcafe, you can see more of the items that will be on display and available for sale at the fair. We've got one dealer bringing a lot of 1920s Parisian bourgeois prints. We've got original lyrics from the band Blondie from another bookseller.
Oh, fun!
Our firm Johnson Rare Books is representing the estate library of Playboy founder Hugh Hefner, so we'll have some of his books at the fair. Yeah, it's exciting. It's going to be a great fair.
Do you have some samples of some of that in your collection of images?
Of the Hefner stuff? No, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
Not that
anyway.
Far along with that yet.
Out of curiosity, though, in the LA area, when I grew up, obviously, I was for a while there. One of my parents' friends were in the television or movie business. And do you have any dealers that are coming that are bringing scripts or movie collections of movie people or anything along that line? Do you have anybody that's, you don't get that kind? New York, you do to a certain extent, but the rest of the country, obviously, Los Angeles is the head of the movie business, that pretty much the head of the television industry. And do you have a lot of that dealers that specialize in that coming?
With all due respect to New York, they've been following our lead for years.
I'm not in New York at all.
In terms of cinema, we in particular Howard Prouty, who goes by Red Ink Books.
Okay.
He sort of wears two caps. He has his book business, and he is also the acquisitions librarian at the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences, Margaret Herrick Library. So he does a lot in terms of books into film and other material like that. Hollywood material, of course, is ever present around here. And even though it sort of took a little bit of a dip in the early 2000s, it's back in a major way.
So, Brad, how did you get involved in this craziness called the antiquarian book business?
When I was 15 years old and a sophomore in high school, there was a notice in the daily bulletin for an apprentice bookseller, and I was already an avid reader, and I'd patronized this shop quite a bit already. So I rushed down right after school to pick up an application, and here I am 26 years later.
Oh my! So, did you know what an apprentice book dealer was?
No, not as such. No,
Yeah.
no. I just thought I'd get a good employee discount, and that would be great.
Reasonable enough, yes. So your book business has always been in the LA area.
Correct. Right here in Covina, which is about halfway between Pasadena and Claremont. It was formerly called The Bookshop, and it was owned and operated by Roger Gozdiecki, who was my mentor in the trade. Roger decided he wanted to downsize and work out of a home office about 12, 13 years ago, and Jen and I seized the opportunity and purchased the shop from him and rechristened it Johnson Rare Books and Archives.
All righty. I just see one of my old friends from California, Bob Orwin, who's actually in the television movie business. Asked, what are the times of the show and how much does it cost? What are your hours and all of that?
Well, we're open from 10 to 6 on Saturday and from 11 to 4 on Sunday, I believe. Let me seek over here. Yes, I got it right. 10 to 6 on Saturday, 11 to 4. And for your listeners, viewers, if they are interested in attending, they can go to our Eventbrite for tickets. If you enter the code Antiquarian in the promo code box, you'll get tickets for half price, $10.
That works. Thank you for doing that. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. We hope to see everybody out at the Proud Bird on next Saturday.
I don't know if I can put this on there, but I'm going to try.
Okay. Well, while he's doing that. Yeah, I hope you don't get rained out. This everything's okay. I'm sure
that was the first thing we checked.
Yeah.
we last fair was at the great state-of-the-art Pasadena Convention Center, and wouldn't you know it, those rains started coming down, and a tiny little hole. We had a little drip coming down from the ceiling, and I was like, oh God. Fortunately, no books were harmed. But
yeah, books and water don't do very well together. There's ways around it, as I'm sure you well know, but they're annoying, expensive, and sometimes not 100% guaranteed. That's one of the
Los Angeles water
we have a lot of the humidity. It's a lot of my times I'm buying a state, I ask where it is, and they say, oh yeah, we kept it in the attic in the garage for 20 years. It's Harry died. And I go, little brown spots on? They go, yeah, they all do. And I say, well, you'll have a nice day now, and call somebody else.
It's unfortunate. Well, Brad, thank you very much for joining us here on the Rare Book Cafe, and we wish you well with your show on. Once again, it's next weekend. It's the is it the it's the 5th and the
6th.
It's 5th.
It's of October, almost Halloween.
And we were going to ask you about the this iteration of the of your show is Rare Books LAX, and of course that's Los Angeles, known as Los Angeles International Airport. So what's
the restaurant's right on the runway?
Well, our company is Rare Books LA, and we from the get-go we wanted to explore new markets or reopen markets that had been neglected for some time. The reason why we dubbed this one Rare Books LAX is we are using a venue, the Proud Bird, which is located about, maybe about 100 yards from the south runway of LAX. You can sit there and watch the planes come in.
Yep. Been there, done that.
It's a fantastic, recently renovated venue, and we're excited to be back on the west side. And in the future, you'll probably see Rare Books LA events in other locations throughout California and the Southwest. And if people have suggestions for us or would like more information, they could visit our website at rarebooksla.com.
So your intention is to dominate the Southern California with rare book events. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, these regional book fairs are vital to the ecosystem, and for many of us that sort of, grew up in the trade,
Sure.
it's where you cut your teeth, and for those who aspire to, to do the big international fairs or join the ABAA, this is where you learn the process and you get exposed to so much material and you learn so much from your colleagues. And then from the point of view of a collector or even a book lover, just it's serendipity left and right. You walk down the aisle and just are exposed to so much wonderful material that you never even knew existed. And it opens up new doors for reading, for collecting, for scholarship. They're vital to the the book community.
Well, congratulations on your second effort here, and we look forward to seeing what comes down the pike next. And thank you for being with us. And we hope you can join us again at another time, perhaps as you lead up to another book fair.
I'd love to.
And congratulations with your not really your day job, but your new appointment, Brad. And the book world will be pleased, and you'll have an interesting couple of years. And thank you for doing what you're doing, Mr. President.
Not too soon. Not too soon. Okay, Vic's got a few more months.
Mr. President to be.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
For those of you that didn't understand that reference, he's now the vice president of the ABAA, and the guy we're talking about, Vic, is a mutual friend of all of ours, and he's outgoing after a 2-year term, and Brad is about to become, I believe it's in February or March. I'm not sure when they change hands, but he will be for 2 years the incoming and then the operating president of the ABAA, and we're looking forward to having him. It's a lot of work and it's a somewhat thankless job, but he's volunteered to do it. As I said, he was vice president for a couple of years. They did a good job there, so we're looking forward to taking the helm, and I'm sure Vic's looking forward to getting some sleep. So there you have it.
Indeed. Well, we have coming up next, we have Edie is back with some miniature books, and she's got some stories to tell for us. So let's say hello to Edie. And she is coming right in. There's Edie now.
Here I am. Hey, how you doing? It was very interesting to hear Brad speak, and congratulations on being the upcoming president of the ABAA, and your book fairs sound absolutely fabulous. Good luck on it. My first story is when we were clearing out this house, the hoarder's house. It's not quite a miniature book, but I found this little book there, and it's called God's Child. And when you open it up, inside you have this inputted crucifix, and then as you open it further, it's a prayer book for children. And in here, there are a lot of original photographs that I thought were very interesting. And it belonged to a Jamie Soto from Hoboken, New Jersey, dated May 12th, 1962. And I thought that this was, even though it is not a true miniature, I thought that this was a wonderful little book. If anybody knows who Jamie Soto is, that would have gotten this in 1962, and he contacted me, I would be happy to let him or his family have it back. Now, my wonderful story this week is Steve has been working on an appraisal, presidential appraisal of documents and books for a new friend, Ronald Lazoff, and his wife, Chinsina Lazoff, and they are out in Colorado now. And last week, in came an envelope addressed to Steve. And in that envelope, there were two books, which I will show you in a minute, called Global Stability. And it was a speech that Gerald Ford gave to Visa International Convention in Quebec in September of 1980. And what's it talking about? World peace, stability of world economics, the value of the individuals in all countries, and the importance of it. And his speech was printed in two versions, of which they sent me both. Um, Global Stability by Gerald Ford. And in the back, this one is copy number 43 of 400. And as you can see, an absolutely beautifully bound little book,
Isn't that
miniature book.
wonderful?
It was also done in a special edition where the first 100 copies have a slipcase, bound, and the statement of limitations. This is number 5, signed by Gerald Ford. They were all signed by Gerald Ford. And it's the one of 100. And when I called them to thank them um, for such a generous gift and for such a wonderful addition to our miniature book collection, my miniature book collection, our miniature book collection, Ron said to me, well, that's what friends do, which I thought was beautiful because, as I have said many times, being on this show and being online, a member of the Miniature Book Society, getting to know people who are active in the Miniature Book Society, yes, I am making new friends that have similar interests. And as I have said before, even though these are definitely prized treasures, I have read this book. I read Gerald Ford's speech. Very, very timely, even though it was done in 1980. If he were to be giving this speech today with the political climate going on, it's very, very timely and it's very, very apropos. It was absolutely wonderful. And so I thank Ron and his wife, and we are both looking forward to meeting them in person when his phenomenal collections go to the Bush and the Reagan libraries, which he is donating to those libraries. Got to be a good guy to do things like that, to give things from Washington to and including Trump. I mean, how wonderful can that be? The other thing I want to do on a personal note is to give a shout out to the class of 1989. They had their reunion last night, and Stephen and I attended. It was absolutely wonderful to see people that I taught that graduated from high school in 1989. And I am still quelling over the compliments that I had where my ex-students, I was always known as a hugger. I'm still a hugger. So I got a lot of hugs. I got a lot of wonderful compliments. I got,
Oh, good.
and the highlight of it, and this is Sierra, if you are watching, one of the boys that I taught unfortunately died last year, and his mother showed up at the reunion to see me, to thank me. And that was a tearjerker, but it was a wonderful, wonderful reunion. And now, thank God, we're finished with the hoarder's house. We just have to sort everything out now and sell it. So that's what I have to offer today.
It has been quite an adventure, that house, hasn't it?
Well, it makes me look around our apartment and I can say we are bordering on being a hoarder's apartment
Uh-oh.
because, but it's all classy stuff. And so Stephen always says we're going to be getting the stuff out of here and into the warehouse. The warehouse now doesn't have room for a toothpick because on every trip out to that house, another load went in. And not only did Steve find books and give away books to a couple of college kids that came down twice, they left with carloads of books, but we found Chanel jewelry. You talk about appraisals and you talk about authenticity of signatures. We found some Chanel jewelry. I called corporate office in New York of Coco Chanel. I called Bal Harbor shops, exclusive Bal Harbor shops, the Chanel thing. And I said, who can authenticate the jewelry and belts and pocketbooks and so forth that we found that are, I found them online. It looks the same. It smells the same. It sounds the same. And they told me at corporate and Chanel, if you buy something at Chanel, you get a receipt. If you go into Chanel anytime with your Chanel product and your receipt, they will take care of it. They do not authenticate anything that is vintage, which I found very, very interesting. I made a half a dozen phone calls speaking to several people, reiterating my amazement that a company like Chanel does not do any authenticating of their products. But nonetheless, we have someone locally interested in buying it with a vintage shop. So hopefully that will be the first step in removing some of these things from our possession and from our physical surroundings.
Well,
Although I did, go ahead,
considering that
Alan.
you collected many of the things from the hoarder house, and you now have those at your house, you you have a logistics problem on your hand, don't you?
Well, we have some magnificent pieces. We have a set of dishes and serving pieces that are extraordinarily magnificent, that again I found online. And some of these pieces are being sought after by collectors. And there I am looking at it in our living room. The the pieces, Stephen, can you hand me one of those plates or something? The pieces are absolutely magnificent. I have never seen them. It is certainly nothing that I want because we don't do that kind of entertainment.
Right.
But the things are absolutely gorgeous. Stephen is handing me a soup tureen. Now, as you can see, it's
Oh
got a
my!
peacock on it. Yes. And you can't really appreciate, maybe you can, the size of this, but
Wow.
it's absolutely in perfect condition and it's got the markings on the bottom that you need for authenticity. And I was able to look this, and we have a whole set of dinner for eight, salad bowls, soup tureens, serving pieces, soup dishes, three-tiered little things for petit fours that you would walk around. And it's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. It has nothing to do with books, but in this hoarder's house, there was Ralph Lauren clothes for someone not my size, unfortunately, or I would have thrown out my whole wardrobe and replaced it with original labels in them. We've got full length mink coat. I mean, really needed Miami Beach, Florida, right? But a full length mink coat, fox uh, uh, hoodie things, hoodie jackets that you would wear that were Ralph Lauren or Chanel with the original labels on them. Unfortunately, no receipts. This woman collected everything. I got a little stamp dispenser for postage stamps that looks like an old-fashioned mailbox, and you put the roll of stamps into this. Stephen, will you hand me that from my desk? The little mailbox. Yes, please. That's it's more than cute. It's cloisonné. Stephen said it's just cute. But this is something that suddenly found its way onto my desk, and it will not leave my desk. Thank you. The Chanel belt, a chain, where each piece has the CC on it.
And the markings on the back.
And the markings on the back. And I mean, just gorgeous stuff. That is not my style. However, how
Uh-oh.
however, how do you not take these things? I mean, they're do we deal in dishes? No. We got Ralph Lauren glasses, so we replaced our dollar store with nothing wrong with the Dollar Tree, but we replaced our dollar store, our glasses, with Ralph Lauren crystal goblets and tumblers and glasses. Uh, Beautiful pins that I was able to find online
My.
that are, yeah, I mean, just absolutely magnificent pieces, magnificent.
That's sterling silver.
And something like this, it's sterling silver and vintage. So we're going to have a good time, hopefully selling it quickly now that we can't make any more trips out to that house. But what was out, it was just anybody that borders on hoarding should definitely think about where their stuff is going to go, because so much of it wound up in a dumpster,
Oh my.
which
Really?
was very, very sad, because it was uh the hope of the people that are turning it over, because they bought it to flip the house, and they didn't buy it for the contents. And it's
Right.
friends of ours, and they said, Steve, it's filled with books, you really want to go out there. Well, a lot of times, Thorne, as you say, people say what they have, and it's not the reality of what they have. But this is the reality, and it was just very, very sad that we couldn't find a market for everything while we had access to the house.
Wow.
There
Well,
were
Edie,
four. I'm sorry, Alan, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that as always, you bring just fascinating things and fascinating tales to the program, and we appreciate that.
Well, I love it. I love it. And again, I want to thank Ron and his wife for Chencia is her name. Her spelling of her name is Vincencia, but Ron told me they call her Chencia, and she's from Italy, and they're just lovely. I've had some very nice conversations, and look forward to meeting them in person. And that I will cherish this Gerald Ford, these two books. And if you could get a copy of his speech elsewhere, I would suggest reading it, because even though he gave it in 1980, it's very timely today.
Some of these things just don't go out of style, do they?
No, no. And Gerald Ford sure didn't. He's one of my boys. So,
Thank you, Edie, and we look forward to seeing what you have next week.
oh, so do I.
Thank you,
So
Edie.
do I. It's always an adventure.
Always
It's
a
always
pleasure
good
to see
to
what
see
you have.
you two. You both look well, and again, congratulations to Brad, and good luck to him. His enthusiasm should just match the sales he'll have next weekend. And here we are on the 28th of the last day of September.
That's right.
Today's the 28th. Yes.
The
Where does
28th.
time go?
It's
Time flies when you're having fun.
let's see, day before yesterday, well, a few days ago during this week, we had almost, I think, we were right at 6 months from the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair. So we're looking forward to that.
Can't believe it. Can't
How many
believe it.
days is that, Alan?
Well, I'm glad that you asked. It's 209 days to the Florida Antiquarian Book
Boy,
Fair.
you're quick on math. I would have figured 6 months and 30 days would be 180 days, but guess not.
Well,
Have you
there's-
spoken to Larry Kellogg, Alan?
I have not. I have not.
Okay, I hope his wife is doing well with her broken toes. Mine is totally healed. I'm back on the road. Watch out.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Edie.
Thank you.
Well, it's always good to see Edie, and I'm pretty glad that they're finished with that house. You're right; it's not a lot of book collecting, but you know what? It still has some bearing. Whether it's a fashion item or a rare book, you still need to somehow do some research on it and find out what it is and if there's a provenance and how much it's worth and all of that kind of good stuff. So there's a lot of parallel there.
You really do. You really do, and there's a lot of research that goes into, as you know, goes into the collecting of rare and collectible books. And we are expecting to have Lindsay. I don't see him. He seems to have been taken a quick break, but I think there he is now. So.
If not, I can speak. I think Lindsay's got a very interesting topic, and there's Lindsay. And I've been waiting, as they say, for Sunday Night Football. I've been waiting all night, all week to hear you speak. So,
well, if nothing else, that suggests you need to get out more. But it has been a thrilling show for me. The last time Brad Johnson was on, he was schooling me on how the federal courts work. And so I was hoping he would have new insights into that topic, but alas, he did not. But I wish him well in his new venture. What I'd like to talk about for a moment or two is how, if you come across a book, you can find out a lot on your own. I am not a member of the ABAA, and I've had many of their members tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm kind of an underground bookseller in that way. I just figure things out as I go. And as Dr. Spock wrote in his book on childcare, which was part of how I was raised, he said, "You know more than you think." And thanks to the internet, which some of us decry as the end of civilization as we know it, but thanks to the internet,
probably with good reason.
Yeah,
I think that's largely rubbish, but I leave that to people who want to argue, to tens of people on Facebook. I mean, geez, every week on Facebook, I see people who tell me they should be president, and they have an audience of 12. So God bless them. But you know more than you think, and you have more tools at your feet than you imagine. And what I'd like to do is pull up a picture that my sister sent me this week. And I hope this will turn up.
It's in the developer now.
My sister sent me this and said, "This book belongs to a friend of mine. What do you think it's worth?" So here I am, fat, dumb, and happy, looking at a slip-cased book that is a copy of Mein Kampf, the great historical screed by Adolf Hitler, first published in 1925. after he did a stint in prison. Well, you know, a lot of people, if you're a dealer, as I am, people will bring you stuff like this and say, what's it worth? And how do we figure that out? First thing we do, it's really, you know, I have to tip my cap to Arthur Conan Doyle, because I think Sherlock Holmes would begin with, what do we see? We see a leather-spined book with gilded titling. We see 3 acorns on the spine. We see a slipcase that seems to be in good condition. So where do we go from there? I went to, first of all, I had to get over my own inclination not to deal in such books. I've done a couple of copies of Mein Kampf in the past and declined to sell them, just because there are a lot of them out there, and there are other people more than happy to do that. There are things that I think all of us don't need to be complicit in, and that's one that I have over. But, you know, my sister asked me, it's a friend of hers, and so I thought, okay, what can I find out? So I asked for the title page and the copyright page, and by a circuitous method of photography and book messaging, those came to me, and I discovered that this was not input 2. It was both Mein Kampf, the book Hitler wrote in prison, and then, because it did not sell well, he wrote another book a couple of years later, which explained in more hateful detail the aims of his National Socialist movement. And so the first thing I looked at the copyright page was that all of these books had been included together in this volume. So then I backed up a step, because, you know, my initial biases aside, a general of the market for such books, but I go to the experts, and so I Googled this book, and that there are articles out there by real experts who will tell you more about the history of the Hitler bibliography. Books Why, which is a wonderful rare book site attached to a bookstore down near Charleston here in South Carolina, had an article. Biblio had a wonderful article. They're one of the sponsors of the book fair. There's also a site called the Hitler Library, and I learned some things from it as well. So I asked, okay, now I have a general sense of what I'm dealing with, and I wrote back to my sister and said, can you send me some more pictures? Because the publishing information indicated this was a 1939 edition. The copyright dates were 1925 and 1927 from the original works, but that didn't tell me what the history of this book was. So she sent me back some more photographs of the book and its title pages, and one page that really caught my eye was a page that looked like a certificate, as if it was an event that had occurred. It had signatures on it that were clearly not printed, and that told me it was probably an edition of what we in the trade call the Mein Kampf wedding edition. And, you know, that may make you giggle or recoil depending on your predilections. But what I did learned after a little further research was that after 1939, Adolf Hitler decreed that a copy of this book should be given to every couple that married in Germany. This was both a convenient way to ensure adherence to his orthodoxy, and a way to make money, because he had a deal with his publisher where he got a 10% royalty on every single copy that was produced. So every time, once the government decreed that a copy of this book should be sent to every single married couple in Germany, he got a royalty. And so at the time World War II broke out, Adolf Hitler was making approximately $12 million a year in today's money in royalties on his own book, while making every patriotic couple in Germany get a copy. And what would happen was, when they were given this copy, the governor of the province in which they lived would sign it and list their names. The first thing you come to when you open the book is that you find this page where this certificate exists, where the marriage would be recorded and the governor would sign it. Then you flip over and there's a photograph of Hitler with a facsimile autograph with a tissue page to protect the image, as was the case in those days. And then you would come to the title page. Well, what does that tell me? That makes me want to ask the owner of the book, has this come down through your family? Because if it has, then it may be attached to someone significant. So I sent that back to my sister, who sent it on to her German friend, who now lives in Charleston. And she responded, yes, it belonged to her great uncle. She inherited it from him. He was married in 1939 in Mannheim and went on to become a very successful and wealthy printer after the war. Well, that tells me something else. It tells me two things, really. One is that this is, in fact, the Hitler wedding edition of 1939, and also who it was issued to. It tells me the parties to that marriage, and it gives me, from a provenance standpoint, if I wanted to sell this book, a linear history going back over 80 years. I know who it was issued to, I know where it went when the old man died, and I know where it is now, which is what you...
Very good. That's great.
The kind of thing that adds value to a book. Because, we all see books all the time, but knowing the history of that book and the stages it has gone through helps us verify the history of it, particularly in the case of Mein Kampf editions, because frankly, there are a lot of bullshit fake editions out there. There are a lot of weird people that deal in this, as at the same time, there are a lot of people who take this kind of thing seriously as an act of scholarship. So I wrote back and asked some more questions and learned a bit more about the wedding of the couple in question. And from that, I was able to then boil down to the fact that this was, in fact, the 1939 wedding edition. Okay, what do we do now? Well, we can go to Biblio, we can go to Abe, we can go to any number of different sites, but, golly, that's like sifting through popcorn, because there are people who post all kinds of things. On Biblio, for example, there are 503 copies of Mein Kampf listed. They are not all, however, the one I was looking at. And so there we kind of shift the researcher hat and put on the appraiser hat. What we have to do then is look at the different editions and descriptions, most particularly the descriptions of the books that are on offer on any given rare book aggregation site. And the tip that I would give people is that the vaguer the description, the more likely it is that the seller does not know what he or she has. Appraisal is the act of comparing one thing to another. Steve is a great expert in appraisal, and I yield to him in these matters. But basically, you have to figure out, first of all, which we've kind of done in my brief description, what do I have? Now, how do I figure out what it's worth based on comparables in the trade? So I know I have a signed 1939 wedding edition of Hitler's Mein Kampf that has come down through the same family. How do I know what to do next? When I look at Abe, for example, which has 700 different copies ranging from $5 to $12,000. Well, you have to just kind of sort through. You have to what I did was try to boil down my search based on the condition of the book. In this case, the book is in dazzlingly good condition. The slipcase is undamaged. The book has no chips. The boards are as original. They're kind of a creamy brown color. So as you narrow down your search for what you're looking for, you can find out an amazing amount. And in the end, what I found was a book that matched every point in the book that my sister's friend had asked me to look at. It was on Biblio, and it was a detailed point-by-point description of the book, clearly by a dealer who knows what he's talking about, and he valued it at $400. Now, having said that, $400 is what he as a retailer wants for that book. Does that determine what the book is worth? No, not really. It's worth what someone is willing to pay that dealer. And that's one of the things that we all have to take into account when we're searching out the value of a book that comes across our desk. If we want to sell it to a dealer, then they may want half that. So perhaps the $165 price I saw in another edition is closer to the mark. On the other hand, I have seen a similar edition of this book for $900. That may be somebody who just really, really wants to either make a lot of money or someone who really, really wants to acquire that book. So there the trail kind of runs cold, because at the end of the day, what a book is worth is what someone is willing to pay you to buy it. But
Indeed.
what I wanted to do today was suggest, as Dr. Spock did 60 odd years ago, that all of us, be we dealers or the most amateur collectors, or as one of our colleagues once described me, a teller of cute little stories, we all know a certain amount. And from that, thanks to the internet, we can find out an amazing amount of information. And I have been able to write my sister's friend and say, I would insure this book for about $1,000. It might bring less, it might bring more, but $400 is kind of the midpoint. And clearly, the right person will come along wanting this at one point. It's, as you see, it is in astonishingly good shape for a mass-produced volume over 80 years old.
Well, a
And we
printer,
know of it, and that is what makes dealing in rare books so much fun.
It is indeed, because it's the adventure of discovering, the adventure of learning, and the adventure of doing the research. We've come down to almost the end. I have something that I want to share. I know Thorne has a pretty good bit of material, so we're going to ask him to hold on to that. And I wanted to get Stephen in here in a moment to give us a quick update on what the where the market is and what he's learned there. But before we do that, I want to share this thing that is not really exactly about books, but it is obliquely related because it's about history. And I just thought it was interesting. This was shared on Twitter by the lawyer Bill Holleran, and he said, "What's that? There's a lesson here in for people who don't think that history matters. And what's the big deal about railroad tracks? The U.S. standard for railroad tracks, standard gauge, is, and that's the distance between, as you see on the picture there. That's the distance between the rails, and it's 4 feet 8.5 inches, and that's kind of an odd number, don't you think? Well, why was that gauge chosen? Well, here's the history that gives you some insight into that. The English English engineers designed the first U.S. railroads, and why did they build them that way? Because the first rails were built by the same people who built the wagon wheel, the wagon tramways, and that was the gauge that they used, and so that's what they used, and so that's how our railroads got that way. But then you ask the question, how did how did they get to that gauge? And how they got to that gauge was because the people who built the tramways used the same tools that they used to build wagons, which were the same wheel spacing. And why were the wheels that particular wheel spacing? Well, if they tried to use any other spacing, the wagon wheels would break more often than not, and they, especially on the long distance roads in England, and that's what the spacing of the wheel ruts was. And the reason that the wheel ruts were that way is because the imperial, if you know your history of England, the imperial Rome built those things. They built those roads, and they built them to fit to use for their legions, and they built them the chariots in a certain size. Well, why did they do that? Why did they build them in that particular size? Well, they did that because they needed to build them in such a way that they would all be alike. And when they did that, the spacing was the same, and it was passed right on down to where we were in England and where we were in the United States. And so therefore, the United States standard for the railroad gauge is 4 feet, 8.5 inches, and it was derived from the original specifications of the Imperial Roman war chariot. Bureaucracies tend to live forever. So the next time someone hands you some specifications, some procedures, some processes, and you wonder what horse's ass came up with that, what you may be surprised to find out is actually it was it came from the fact that these chariots were made so that they would fit 2 horses. So it was the size of 2 horses' asses. So but you may wonder what the twist of the story is, and that is that what does that have to do with the space shuttle? Well, sitting on the space shuttle, when the space shuttle is sitting on the launch pad, there are 2 big booster rockets on either side of the space shuttle. And those booster rockets are called SRBs. And you can see them in both of these pictures. They were made by a company that at a factory that they had in Utah. The engineers who designed them would have liked to have made them a little bit wider than they were, but they couldn't do that. And the reason was that they had to be shipped by train and they had to fit through a tunnel. So in order to get them where they needed to go, they had to sit on a railroad car and they had to be shipped. So when you think about it, a major space shuttle design feature of what was arguably the world's most advanced transportation system was determined over 2,000 years ago by the width of a horse's ass. And if you thought that being a horse's ass wasn't important enough, realize, and this is where lawyer Bill Holleran makes his own comment. He says that current horses' asses are controlling everything else. He says that ancient horses' asses controlled most everything, and current horses' asses controlled everything else. So that was his statement and his opinion. And so with that, I want to invite Stephen to give us a quick market report. This just in from Stephen.
Hey, the market appears to be very healthy, guys, and I'm going to base it on this. These are the auction results from the last couple of weeks at the Rare Book Hub. And when you start seeing the auction results being 90% sell through, 89.11 sell through, 88.14, 96.5, 99.12. The market seems to be in pretty good shape. And it's a little bit of everything. Prices in this particular, the top 25 lots that were going on this week were actually things, and I say this, if you read these market reports, consistently, you realize that sometimes you've really got to speak some serious foreign languages, even though it's printed out for you. But almost all of these top 25 items ranging from $45,000 for something by Albert Einstein to $5,000 for a calligraphy specimen, for $5,000. I got to say the market's doing pretty well. I don't see any downturns. Rare books are moving along as they should, and that it's a good market. Can't complain.
Well, good, and thank you very much for that report. And what do we have to look forward to?
Well, for us for the weekend, I still have more appraisal work to do. But after October 10th, it'll stop for a while. And then our game plan is just to get into selling all the stuff that we had found in this house.
You've got your work ahead of you there, don't you?
If I put 5 items a day on every day for the next year, I still won't cover everything I took out of this house.
Oh my goodness.
I'm not complaining. Labor of love.
Well, we want to thank you, listeners, for joining us today. We want to thank Dennis in Calgary, and Sophia in Ashland, Oregon, and Sharif Afifi in Alexandria, Egypt. I want to thank
And
everybody
Mark
who.
Warner, yeah, Mark was here earlier, I think.
And so we appreciate you joining us. We are the Rare Book Cafe, the world's only live stream program devoted to rare and collectible books. And we are here for the love of the book. Goodbye, everybody.
Have a great weekend, y'all.